Welcome to our next contemporary review of society on social and leadership. In this video narrative, we will examine the fourth major group of primary institutions called social and leadership. This is part one of a four-part video narrative. Primary institutions within social and leadership principally revolve around the individual person, who is at the very center of culture, and from the person extends out to the closest institutions in their immediate lives, which envelop them with structure and guidance as they grow and learn. Social and leadership extend out from the individual person to the surrounding family, perhaps the most important cultural institution in all humanity, where an individual is encompassed with both immediate and extended relatives and friends, meaningfully purposed to provide for, protect, educate, and raise the person throughout their formative years of life. And this primary group extends further out from the family into the closest surrounding institutions of community, where many associations and groups are concentrated, and are purposed with the structure to provide the needed support and assistance to the family in the villages and townships of life. And this primary group extends further out into the culture, to include the institutions of social leadership, enveloping communities with direction and courage, to step forward with vigor when the need arises, to galvanize people to act for the right things in society, those causes or issues which implicitly or explicitly press upon communities and families with impact, to either protect and grow life of the individual, or to suffocate and destroy such precious life. And social leadership of those concerns is best when it's directed by a moral compass of right and wrong, a structure, you might say, to focus their leadership on thoughts, choices, and decisions, which lead to noble action and not to adversity, a moral compass which guides their understanding of society through the optics of foundational values and God-inspired principles for human conduct, thereby helping to ensure the quality of life we all seek in the world for ourselves and our loved ones. When we speak of social leadership, it's certainly not limited to the local community alone, for it encompasses the state and national levels as well, and even further, the international world stage. Social leadership emerges and is necessary in all these venues, small and big, immediate and far-reaching. Sometimes it's needed, and sometimes not. Sometimes it's recognized, other times ignored. Sometimes it's championed, other times squandered. Sometimes a success, and many times a failure. Last, we include the institutions which pursue the noble goal of global stability in our world. Those organizations whose efforts are dedicated towards improving peace and reducing strife in our international community of nations. Those institutions which serve to promote peace amongst competing and conflicting cultures. Those structures which are vital to life and the pursuit of free and open societies, always mindful of human dignity and human value. Inherent in our overall discussion of the primary institutional group we call social and leadership are those social trends and influences actively exerting influence and change upon the general population, bringing to bear pressure on the family, the community, the leaders, and global stability. A pressure of social change, a pressure of cultural influence, a pressure of stability or instability. As such, we speak to the major ones, especially those social trends that are not contributing to a healthy culture, but instead are adding to the deterioration of human affairs. As we approach this topic, it's important to be reminded that the inner nature of our culture and the quality of its tenor is largely a function of how moral values are understood and practiced in the prevailing society, as evidenced in social trends, politics, and those actions, either taken or withheld, either pursued or abandoned, in what people choose to say and do, or what they choose not to say or do. As moral relativity has increasingly spread across our culture and deepened its roots into society, we have experienced an unfavorable result, a definitive decline in American moral values. And we find this evidenced in research indicating shifting value positions in the general population, our leadership, and across our demographics. Invariably, many of our social institutions are likewise affected, We can clearly see this as liberal progressives are aggressively asserting their relative moral agenda on and throughout our society and institutions. As a consequence of spreading moral relativism, we see our institutions of society, our culture, and our social leadership all weakening under the stress of an increasing amoral culture. It has and is penetrating all aspects of our society, the people, the institutions, the social trends, and most unsettling, the prevailing structure of morality in culture itself. Here's some real and active examples of what we're referring to. Liberal progressives act and legislate against the most innocent in our society. The American family is in decline. Sexual identity and healthy socialization is being distorted by agenda. Respect for innocent life is marginalized by a hardline feminist left. Women and children are frequently abused. Drug abuse, especially heroin and opioids, is increasing. Violent gangs have spread across our great nation and deepened their grip. The drug trade is corrupting our culture while it kills our people. Violent crime and murder is rising in our major cities. Extreme hate is killing hundreds across the country. Radical Islamic terror is killing thousands of innocents across the world. And our world and national leaders dither. So I have a question for you. What do you think is happening to morality in America, as indicated by the most recent research on the subject? Do you think morality is strengthening or weakening? Do you think the general population, as generations change, are getting more liberal in their morality or more conservative? Gallup in May of 2015 completed some research on the question and reported out that Americans are continuing to shift their moral stance on a variety of social issues. And in their findings, they highlight a variety of behaviors, which Americans find increasingly morally acceptable now than they did in the early 2000s. Keep in mind, the further we go back in time, prior to the year 2000, we would find the degree of moral standards to be higher, thereby emphasizing the rapidity of change in what Gallup reports. Gallup's findings, in summary, see Americans as now more accepting of a number of moral issues, nearly across the board, as changes in moral disposition are in a liberal direction, and the biggest shift has been on the issue of gay-lesbian relations. Gallup reports out that Americans are more likely now than in the early 2000s to find a variety of behaviors morally acceptable, including gay lesbians, as we mentioned, having a baby outside of marriage, and sex between an unmarried man and woman. The moral acceptability of many of these issues is now at a record high level. On the chart you can see the findings, where Gallup compared 2001 to 2015. Gay or lesbian relations is up 23%. Having a baby outside of marriage is up 16%. Sex between an unmarried man and woman is up 15%. Divorce is up 12%. Medical research using stem cells obtained from human embryos is up 12%. Polygamy is up 9%. Cloning humans is up 8%. Doctor-assisted suicide is up 7%. Suicide is up 6%. Gambling is up 4%. Abortion is up 3%. The death penalty is actually down 3%. Medical testing on animals is also down 9%. In an overall view of these findings, we see a significant shift to a liberal and morally relative society. The Pew Research Center adds in a different perspective on the LGBT lifestyle, finding a clear majority of religious people, noted in the red box, are not supportive of the LGBT lifestyle or life choice, and a very small percent are supported, noted in the green box. Despite what the liberal media and entertainment industry would have us believe, despite the liberal LGBT indoctrination of our children get at school or college, the numbers are clear. Further, if one were to apply these attitudinal positions to the population of each major religion across the world, we would find an overwhelming number of people who quietly have a non-supportive view of the LGBT behavior and its accompanying lifestyle. And it would follow that many people are being exceptionally tolerant of the LGBT community and not voicing criticism in order to avoid the typical liberal assault of name-calling and violent protest. Today, it's especially challenging for those people who, due to values or faith, are generally opposed to the LGBT culture to remain silent while the LGBT sponsors widely promulgate their lifestyle across their societies. In the primary institution of social and leadership, we find the most essential establishment of all the social institutions, the family, a cornerstone within the structure of our overall culture. Historically, the family has been the bedrock of developing societies over the generations of humanity, and it remains so even to this day. The family, without question, is the principal building block of society, and it is the family unit through which the values of our culture are transmitted, learned, and shaped in individual lives, especially throughout the formative years of our children. And it is through the family the values are nurtured from generation to generation to generation. It bears noting that we aren't referring to just any relative definition of family, as moral relativists encourage. Instead, we're referring to the structure of the nuclear family, with male and female parents who understand and are responsibly committed to their role as father and mother in the household, who are passionately focused on rearing children in a stable environment of love and purpose in life. And yes, contemporary times have resulted in a shifting definition of the family unit, irrespective of opinion or belief. The social forces leaning against society, and especially the nuclear family, have eroded the structure over time, and consequently, society's concept of family has modified. Ideally, we recognize the family unit as the best structure to help ensure a long and most promising design to successfully raise a child. It is not the only one. A family is present wherever the participants resonate with God's philosophy for life, holding human life as sacred and with extraordinary meaning, consistent with God's intent for humanity and his endless process for the graduation of life. As we mentioned, there are strong forces constantly challenging the integrity of the nuclear family, the bonds and fidelity of parents, and these social forces have splintered relations, confused and corrupted persons, impugned the integrity of marriage and a sustaining commitment to a loving and stable home. As much as we wish they could go away or be overcome, they are with us, and these forces have mutated the family into alternate configurations. Take your pick, they're all out there in society. Many are successful, some not so much, but humanity is adaptive, especially when it comes to survival. Wherever there is genuine commitment to life, sustained by love and God's grace, to create life, to enable life, to promote life, to perpetuate life in perpetuity, whatever form of the family best serves these noble commitments is a successful and desirable form of a family. However, let us understand, the optimal form of family remains the nuclear family as best as it can be achieved, and protected from the corrosive social forces which are poised against it, and whatever we can do to restore the balance to the nuclear family and safeguard its integrity, the better for humanity. At present, our American family, the most important of our primary institutions in our culture, the main institution of value development in our children and communities, is in a state of definitive decline. The social forces we have cited has served out a harsh impact upon young parents and our youth is now coming of age, and it is vitally important we understand how and why this has and is happening. The better we can recognize the adversaries to the family, the better we can right-size the critical issue. Let's take a look. You can see for yourself on the chart how the traditional concept of family is in significant decline. In the 1960s, 73% of American households with children had two heterosexual parents in the home in their first marriage. By 1980, the percentage drops to 61%. and then again it drops to 46% in 2013, roughly a 0.5% decrease per year. Conversely, single-parent households surged to 34%. And on a second chart from the U.S. Census Bureau, we see that out-of-wedlock births have risen from about 3% in 1929 to 40.8% in 2010. By any measure, stunning changes. Here's just a quick look over time that tracks how the percentage of children born to unwed mothers has been growing dramatically. The different lines indicate the trend by race. Notice how the African American community and somewhat the Hispanic community are seeing an alarming rise. Now we'll superimpose the trend of American religiosity on the chart in red, and likewise in black the trend for unaffiliated with any faith. There's a definite correlation. Another institution in our culture vital to the formation of the nuclear family is marriage. And look what's happening. A very significant decline in our youth from generation to generation. Starting out with the boomer generation with a marriage rate of 48%, we see an immediate reduction with the next generation. The Generation Xers are showing less at 36%, and even more so with the millennial generation at 26%. The ramification to these stats is a collapse in the institution of marriage. The figures are alarming and raise the legitimate question, is marriage becoming obsolete? Let's hope not. Turning to another social force leaning against humanity, child abuse. Our culture is showing large cracks in its moral integrity, especially when a baby is simply disposed of like a pile of worthless garbage. This occurred more than once in New York City over the past few years. In the US, did you know that a child is abused every 2 seconds? Every 2 seconds. And 5 out of every 6 cases go unreported. There's a lot of harm going on to the most vulnerable among us. And before they turn 18, 1 in 6 boys experience a form of sexual abuse. 1 in 4 with girls. Pretty nasty stuff. And it's most clearly negatively scars lives and erodes our culture. Another social malady, violence against women. How often do you think a woman is beaten in the US, the most developed nation in the world? Every 9 seconds. That's a lot of hurt and hate going on in America, perhaps even worse in other cultures. Here's some key statistics on the prevalence of domestic violence in the United States. On average, more than 3 women a day are murdered by their husbands or boyfriends. Nearly 1 in 4 women in the United States report experiencing violence by a current or former spouse or boyfriend at some point in her life. Women are much more likely than men to be victimized by a current or former intimate partner. Women are 84% of spouse abuse victims and 86% of victims at the abuse of a boyfriend or girlfriend. About 3/4 of persons who commit family violence are males. And women ages 20 to 24 are at the greatest risk of experiencing non-fatal intimate partner violence. And some more facts to consider, although it's not a good picture, and it certainly helps to explain why the nuclear family is under such assault. A mother can't possibly be successful if she's being abused or harmed. And what type of national leaders have we had on this subject through personal example? Keeping in mind, of course, that sexual predation and lack of respect for women is just another form of abuse. Well, Bill Clinton isn't fit to speak about it, and we've learned in the mid-1990s with his sexual predation on young intern Monica Lewinsky. Nor can we look at the classic entertainers for leadership, especially in Hollywood. And nobody can forget the infamous mic interview between Billy Bush and then candidate Donald Trump. If anything, we get a glimpse into the difficulty in addressing this dark social force against women, when the people we are willing to elect into office themselves are irresponsibly dismissive of the issue. Another negative and harmful social force rallying against humanity is the moral relativist disrespect for life. As children in America, while they are forming and developing in the womb, are subjected to the cruelest and most hideous form of abuse. Abortion. Did you know that over 54 million babies in the United States alone have been aborted and killed since Roe v. Wade in 1973? The number is staggering. And it isn't the worst. In communist China, a declared atheist state, they've killed through abortion over 300 million lives. What does this tell us about humanity with our reason and conscience? And then we have Planned Parenthood, the single biggest abortion provider in the United States, harvesting the innocent body parts of unborn children to sell them. An unborn baby has no worth to the abortioners until they kill the child and sell the body parts. 1.3 million unborn children are killed a year in the U.S. A third of them are slain by Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, through its political donations to the Liberal Democratic Party over the years, has managed to get U.S. tax dollars to help fund their business, to the tune of nearly $528 million a year. And get this, 96% of their purported pregnancy services are spent on conducting abortions, and they want the American public to believe none of the $528 million funds their abortion activity. You've all heard the urging from well-meaning folks to hug a tree and prevent deforestation, and the naturalist cause to save a wolf. How about save the frogs from urban development? There's a lot of noble and life-loving causes out there by many well-intentioned people, and especially liberal progressive-minded. But why do some of the same people think it's okay to abort a child? Is a child's life less precious than a tree, a wolf, or even a frog? For clear-thinking people with morality in their hearts, abortion is the greatest human rights crisis of our generation. Moral relativists vigorously promote abortion and shout down anyone in their path, especially people of faith and who are genuinely love life, especially the life of the innocent. When you think about it and you see it, the vulgarity of their arrogance and self-pride is apparent. And the deceitfulness in the language is revealing. Claiming pro-choice is pro-life is an outrageous lie. However, the emphasis on girls just want to have fun is more to the truth. There is a great deception in America regarding abortion, and liberal progressives have actively and purposely misled the public for decades on the necessitating reasons justifying the rationale for aborting a child. Essentially, liberal relativists have argued a justification based on a woman's health concern, or rape, or incest. They do so in order to appeal to the public's emotional state of mind, suggesting abortion is somehow akin to healthy living or being a victim of violence. But here's an eye-awakening set of facts the liberal abortion advocates don't want you to know. 87.5% of all reasons women give for giving an abortion are motivations based on social and convenience concerns, not rape, not health, but most times self-serving convenience. Very clearly, in the world of truth, where the relative moralists can't deceive and lie, it's not about women's health, or rape, or incest. As you can see, those factors are a clear minority of motivation. Instead, and factually based on truth, it's about convenience. It's about uninhibited lifestyle, of no personal responsibility. It's about putting one's self-interest above a baby's life. Until we universally recognize an unborn baby's life is sacred, precious, and defenseless, and we are the only voice and protectors, then the dark social forces of pro-abortion and the people behind it will continue to destroy the beauty of human life and despoil humanity with their vulgarity and hate. Fortunately, we have leaders willing to step forward, despite the vicious onslaught of criticism and ridicule the hateful moral relativists level on anyone who opposes their life-denying infatuation. Vice President Pence, by nature, by moral conviction, has many times stood for life, life of the unborn child, and so leads the nation with clarity and love. On the other hand, we have the stark example of somebody at the national level, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, from California, Minority Speaker of the House, who actively supports aborting the unborn child, who eagerly defends death over life, and is so recognized by Planned Parenthood and awarded for the hateful slaughter of innocents in the name of progressive immorality. Let's turn now to social forces leaning upon communities in a destructive manner and recognize the institution of community encompasses those organizations, groups, and associations which provide an enriching environment for families to prosper and grow. And those institutional structures defined for the common good where families can come together for their shared safety and betterment from those adversaries in society poised against them and their interests. As the old saying goes, a lone wolf is easy prey, and the world of moral relativists know how to seize the lone wolf for their own designs. The institution of community includes those organizations which enhance and add to the family's ability to raise a child in a healthy and successful manner, and importantly, provide the opportunities for education, employment, and character development, so vital to the shaping of mind and heart. And moral relativists routinely advocate for social forces, which attack the community, looking to isolate the good organizations from the pack and compromise them. We can hardly think of any social force which has done more harm to the community and family than drug abuse, illegal or legal. The scope of the drug trade is so pervasive and penetrative of today's society, with unmitigating harmful consequences, that many in leadership view it as an existential threat to the nation. That means a threat to our very existence. In 2014, 47,000 American lives were lost to illicit drugs and overdoses and other heartbreaking circumstances. Multiply that number by 10, and that's how many extended family members, conservatively, were impacted by each single death. Drug abuse is one of America's largest negative social forces preying upon our humanity. The network of Mexican drug cartels, through their logistical infrastructures, which violates our borders every hour of every day, are conservatively estimated to take in between $19 to $29 billion in illicit drug sales annually. Astonishing and alarming. They routinely target our poorest borders with their illicit smuggling, and directly ship their poison for profits anywhere in the U.S., where they supply client gangs who are eagerly and violently destroying the youth in our urban centers, as well as many suburban communities across the nation. Despite what the empty-headed liberal pundits say, illicit drug use and weed are trending straight up. And we are highlighting the growth of these deadly trends occurring over the Obama administration, beginning in 2008, namely because Barack Obama was decidedly soft on drug crime, taking a very left-wing view of the subject, and the numbers show his results and legacy. One very concerning rise, again under the Obama administration, has been the skyrocketing growth of heroin use among people 12 years and older. And again, note the years where the trend moves sharply up. And add fuel to the fire, we have a growing problem in America of people using prescribed drugs for non-medical purposes. These are statistics from the CDC as of 2010, several years ago, mind you. They projected then that about 7 million people are ensnared in this type of drug abuse, and it can be every bit as damning as illicit drug use, every bit as deadly and addictive. Lives are impaired, lives are lost, and accompanying families shattered, and futures destroyed forever. Very clearly, drug abuse and all which goes with it is destructive to life, destructive to individuals, and most destructive to families and communities. Drug abuse in America is a negative social force on steroids and a calamity for our nation. Where's the accountability for what's been going on? Why, after the expenditure of billions on this issue, has it gotten so out of hand? When we see what has typically been going on in Washington under the prior Obama administration, we can understand why accountability has been fleeting. Over 8 years under Barack Obama, did you ever hear the phrase, the war on drugs? You wouldn't have, because he never used it. More so, Obama never had any real anti-drug policies to effectively address the scourge. Again, let us be reminded of the truth, the facts under Obama's 8-year presidency, because what has happened, and still is by the way, is fully a function of Obama's liberal social justice view of drugs, and has damaged our country immeasurably. What a national leader believes guides his action or failure to act. It matters, because when good steps aside, evil quickly seizes ground. And again, heroin use is out of control, spiking during the soft liberal Obama years. When we look back, can we say Barack Obama had led with leadership on one of the most serious negative social forces impairing our nation? This one chart answers the question. Obama placed energy around his notion of social justice, as typified by his extravagant use of the presidential power of commutations. Rather than leading aggressive efforts on a strategic war on drugs and the cartels, he chose to champion his pseudo-justice theme and let loose over 1,100 convicted drug dealers, traffickers, and violent criminals. And meanwhile, the Mexican drug cartels have swelled their ranks to 100,000 foot soldiers. One can accurately reason it's been out of control. And despite many brave men and women in law enforcement risking their lives to fight this menace, we have not seen real leadership out of Washington. Obama failed us for 8 years. Hopefully President Trump and Secretary Kelly will drive a fresh and bold approach on defeating the drug cartels and gangs. America needs it. This completes part 1 of Social and Leadership. Please continue on by going to 6D, part 2.